Hi everyone, we're working on exercise 14-2 of Murach's Visual Basic 2015, which is build an application with text boxes. I've already opened up Visual Studio, clicked on create a new project. I'm choosing Windows Form App .NET Framework in Visual Basic. Click on next. The project name is your last name, exercise 14-2. Solution and project should be placed in the same directory. Go ahead and click on create. And we need to add the data source, and our data source this time is only going to be the customers table of MMA books. Alright, head on browse, find the database, click next. Yes, I want to copy it over. There's the connection string. Okay, tables, all we're interested in for this project is the customers table. I don't care about anything else. Alright, click on finish. And go to the Solution Explorer, MMA Books, go to Properties, copy to Output Directory, copy of newer. Alright, that is part of step 2. And actually that wraps up step 2. Alright, so then we're on to step 3, is use the techniques in 1410 and 1411 to add the data source fields to the form as text boxes. So I'm going to choose details here. Or can I drag them all over? There we go. So from the drop down on the customers table, I chose details. And then I dragged the table data set over to my form. And it gave these to me as individual text boxes. Now, in an ideal world, state would be a drop down box, but we're not there yet. So we will be at some point. All right, so this should look like figure in 1411, and ours does look like that. You know, it's just a little big right now, so let me move that over, take my form, make it a reasonable size. All right, and test the application. So I'm going to run it. And here it is. We have 696 customers. I can go through one by one. I can jump right to the end. So on step 4, use the toolbar to navigate through the rows. I just did that. Change the data in one column of a row other than customer ID. So let's take this guy and we'll move him next door. And then move to another row and then come back. And you can see that the data has been changed in the data set. Remember, it hasn't been written back to the database yet. Add another row with valid data in all columns. So I'm going to hit the plus. It says leave the customer ID at -1, move to another row and return to the added row to see that. So I'm going to move to another row. There's my data in the data set. I'm going to click the save button, and now this gave me customer ID 701 because that's the customer ID for myself. That was step 4. I think because I actually touched on that. All right. We get a no null allowed exception. So in this case, the name cannot be null. You have to have something in there. So what we need to do is stop my application from running and add exception handling as shown as 14.4. So 14.4 is on page 487. So we validate our data, that's fine. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to do these things. Okay, so we try to end the edit, but if an exception is thrown, we want to catch it. So DB concurrency exceptions, we're not worried about that right now. What we want to do for this particular case is really all we're looking to do is catch the data exception. And then I'm going to do this one. I'm just going to do the data exception. So messagebox.show, what's the error message we want to show? We want to show ex.message. I'm catching the data exception, which would be like that, null, not allowed, whatever, showing it in a nice message box. And then I'm going to, on the customer binding source, I want to cancel the edit. So whatever you tried to do, don't do that. All right, so I'm going to run it again. I'm going to go to add a row, hit save, and this is a much nicer error, right? We caught the exception. We're showing a nice message box. There you go. So if we go to, great, record 702, and I take test, and I delete it, and hit save, it's not throwing an exception. And that's because, as shown in step 7, an empty string is not a null value. And so that's something that we're going to handle later on, actually. All right, step 8, we want to make this thing look like figure 1412. So I'm going to go to my form designer. Something that'll probably trick a lot of people up is they don't notice that the form is called customer maintenance. But because you're watching my video, you see that. Let's see here. Customer ID is read-only. We do not want to give the user the ability to change that. And make this a little bit bigger. Customer name and address. These forms are going to be a little bit wider, about that wide. And then steady state zip are all on the same line. Zip code, that's a good size for it. State, I'm going to make state a little bit smaller because I want to indicate to the user, hey, for state, all I'm looking for is a 2-letter, state name. And then instead of this just saying city, this needs to say city, state, zip. And of course that's moved over a bit now, so make it look like that. And line these guys up. Yeah, sure. There we go. Get rid of these. All right, so that's what your form should look like at this point. Everything's nicely lined up and such. When I run it, there we go. That's what it looks like. And you can see the state field is nice and tiny. You could make that like a masked input that only allows 2 characters or something. Eventually we'll get into making that a drop down, but we don't have that now. Okay, so moving along to step 9, use one of the techniques in 1416 to view the schema for the dataset designer. That is just go into your Solution Explorer, double clicking on the XSD file. There we go. This is what our dataset looks like right now. We just have one table. The table has a couple of methods to it. And then step 10, review the properties for the property window. Anyway, we see that. Look at the select statement that's being used. The select command. Here's the select statement. Click on the triplet dots there. select customer ID, name, address, city, state. So selecting these columns from customers. Step 11, use the query builder to modify the select statement. So we're in the query builder right now. So the rows are sorted in ascending order by name column. So I'll make this box a little bit bigger so you can see everything. We want to take name and we want to sort it ascending. So now our SQL is select these fields from the customers table, order by name. And click on OK. Do you want to regenerate? I'm going to say OK. I want to save that, hit start. Anyhow, now we can see instead of customer ID 1, when we start, our first record is customer ID 157 because this person's name starts with AB. And as we go through, we can see the customer ID is bouncing all over the place, but it's in alphabetical order. I guess we kind of skipped a step here. Step 12, if you want to, you can right click on this, preview data. There you go, that's the data that we're getting back. So this is actually previewing it. That's it. That is all of 14.2. So go ahead, zip that up and send it over.